I'm Susan Yockey with VOA's Middle East Monitor. Coming up, the United Nations demonstrates its concern about weapons in Libya. Reaction to the Palestinians gaining membership to UNESCO. The U.S. presses for a greater Pakistani role in the Afghan peace process. And Tunisian musicians are determined to keep singing freely.
For me, politics should be politic and religion should be religion and personal to each person.
It's all ahead on VOA. The UN Security Council has urged Libya to prevent the spread of arms throughout the region. On the line, we have VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir from New York. Say, Margaret, what is this all about?
Well, basically, the UN Security Council expressed its concern over all these weapons that Colonel Gaddafi had stockpiled during his 42-year tenure in Libya, and many of these weapons have gone missing throughout the conflict, and they're unaccounted for now, and they are not just missing in Libya, but authorities believe that they have proliferated through the African region now. And in fact, we've heard some reports that there are weapons in Sudan that have come from Libya and such. So the idea of this resolution, which Russia drafted, is to halt this proliferation of weapons and related material in Libya and throughout the region and try and find some way to begin accounting for the missing weapons.
Is there a belief that these weapons could actually make the situation even worse?
Well, there's certainly a concern they could fall into the wrong hands. For instance, Al-Qaeda, other militant groups that operate in the region. That's more the concern than perhaps maybe some sort of internal conflict, I think.
Well, I understand that the whole 15-member council unanimously adopted this resolution. What does that say?
Well, I think they're sending a strong message to the Libyan authorities that they want them to, that this is a serious issue, first of all, that they need to direct some attention to it quickly, and that they, want this taken care of because it's a threat not just to Libya's peace and reconciliation process, but it's a threat to regional peace and stability.
Thank you, Margaret. That's VOA correspondent Margaret Bashir speaking with us from UN headquarters in New York. Meanwhile, Libya's National Transitional Council has elected Abdel Rahim El-Kib as the country's new interim prime minister to lead the political transition. El-Kib won with 26 of the 51 NTC members' votes. He is a U.S.-educated electrical engineer who will form a new government to pave the way for national elections. The vote came shortly before NATO ended its Libya mission, concluding an air campaign to protect civilians under a UN Security Council resolution. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen hailed the 7-month bombing campaign during a visit to Tripoli Monday. He said he is proud of the part NATO played in helping Libyan transitional forces drive Muammar Gaddafi from power. Rasmussen called Libya finally free, praising its people for having transformed the country and helping to change the region. Before bloggers, Facebookers, and tweeters in Tunisia mobilized the masses for a movement known as the Arab Spring, there were musicians. They voiced their grievances through an underground music scene. And VOA's Julianne McKellogg reports they are determined to sing openly and freely, especially after last week's historic election.
Tunisian musician Emel Mathlouthi started writing protest music 8 years ago. But she and others were forced by former dictator Zayn El Abidine Ben Ali's regime to only sing in an underground music scene.
We were doing the music we wanted before, but we hadn't places to play this music, and we hadn't any future. So in my case, I moved to France and I had some chances to play around the world.
But Mathlouthi returned when Tunisians took to the streets, igniting the Arab Spring across the region. This amateur video posted on YouTube shows Mathlouthi singing on the streets for the first time, just days after Ben Ali fled the country in January. Other Tunisian artists also began to sing more freely, like those in this music video, created with the support of the United Nations Development Program. Fadia Barizi worked on this song called Entia Sud, or You Are the Voice. She says the artists were free to write what they wanted in this song, and she believes freedom of expression will stay that way in Tunisia.
I think nobody would accept even like half a step behind, and I think they're not realizing yet, the old people, the old politicians, they're not realizing the strength that is coming in this youth.
Tunisia's political parties say they are committed to free expression, according to a Human Rights Watch poll. Under Ben Ali, some opposition party members ended up in prison. Human Rights Watch Eric Goldstein says the interim government has even loosened press codes. But he says freedom of expression may be affected by recent attacks by Islamist extremists on people they find offending Islam in the media.
It's partly an issue of law and order. They're scared to see people like that behaving like that on the streets.
The rise of Ennahda has also raised concerns in the once extremely secular nation. Ennahda has condemned the attacks by Islamist extremists, and spokeswoman Yusra Ghanouchi says the party is committed to free expression.
Freedom of the media as well, and of artistic creativity, and at the same time people may express their opinion whether or not they agree with what is shown, as long as it is within the law and using peaceful means.
Mathlouthi is still skeptical.
I really don't trust these words. I really don't trust these people. For me, politics should be politics and religion should be religion and personal to each person.
And Mathlouthi says this will not stop her from singing. She plans to release a new album about Tunisia's battle for freedom on the anniversary of the revolution. Julianne McKellogg, VOA News, Tunis.
Are you looking for a comprehensive daily look at events reshaping the Middle East? Visit voanews.com/ME. You'll find VOA's original reporting from the region, in-depth analysis from our Washington team, VIP interviews, online polls, photo essays, and mini documentaries. Bookmark us or add us to your RSS reader. That's voanews.com/ME.
The UN Cultural Agency may have gained a new member, but it apparently is losing a major source of funds. Shortly after it voted to make Palestine a full member, the United States said the decision will hurt chances for a Middle East peace agreement. And the State Department announced it would not make a large payment to UNESCO because of a law that prohibits American support for any UN-affiliated body that accepts Palestinian membership. David Killen, U.S. ambassador to the organization, spoke Monday.
The United States has been very clear about the need for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But the only path to the Palestinian state that we all seek is through direct negotiations. There are no shortcuts, and we believe efforts such as the one we have witnessed today are counterproductive. However, we recognize that this action today will complicate our ability to support UNESCO's programs. There are other ways of promoting the cause of the Palestinian people that would not have involved seeking premature membership at UNESCO. We sincerely regret that the strenuous and well-intentioned efforts of many delegations to avoid this result fell short.
U.S. Ambassador David Killen. VOA's Suzanne Presto has more on reaction from Washington.
State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland called the vote regrettable and premature, saying it undermines the shared goal of a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East. Nuland told reporters that although the United States remains committed to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state and to multilateral engagement across the UN system, the vote would have immediate consequences.
Palestinian membership as a state in UNESCO triggers long-standing legislative restrictions which will compel the United States to refrain from making contributions to UNESCO.
Nuland said the United States will not make a $60 million payment to UNESCO in November as planned. Still, she said, the United States would maintain its membership in the organization. U.S. lawmakers have placed restrictions on financial support for any UN-affiliated body that accepts Palestinian membership before an Israeli-Palestinian peace accord is reached. The United States promotes the goal of a two-state solution reached through direct negotiations. 107 UNESCO delegates voted in favor of the Palestinian bid. The State Department's Victoria Nuland said the United States has made its disapproval clear to those countries, adding that U.S. officials are trying to prevent this from happening again.
Well, we're certainly making the point directly to the Palestinians and to the voting members of other organizations that we don't see any benefit and we see considerable potential damage if this move is replicated in other UN organizations.
Nuland said Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has spoken to U.S. lawmakers and has organized a team to speak to Congress about the restrictions and options to protect U.S. interests. According to UNESCO's constitution, if a country is in arrears in its payments to UNESCO for more than 2 years, it could lose its voting rights in the body. The funding cuts could also have implications for the UN body because the United States provides 22% of UNESCO's budget. Suzanne Presto, VOA News, Washington.
Some Afghan officials accuse Pakistan's intelligence service of supporting the Taliban and the al-Qaeda-linked Haqqani network. They say the spy agency, the ISI, is trying to gain influence in Afghanistan before NATO-led troops withdraw in 2014. Pakistan denies both charges. However, U.S. officials also have accused the ISI of secretly supporting the Haqqani network, an accusation that put Washington at serious odds with Islamabad. But there is new information out this week that Washington is relying on Pakistan's spy agency to try to restart talks with the Taliban. The New York Times is reporting that U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton introduced the revamped approach during recent visits to both Afghanistan and Pakistan. The newspaper reports that Clinton's so-called fight, talk, and build approach combines continued U.S. air and ground attacks on the militants, while the ISI tries to bring them to the negotiating table. VOA's Ira Melman spoke about this with Bruce Rydell, a former CIA agent and now senior fellow at the Washington-based research group, the Brookings Institute.
I think the United States is committed to trying to see if a reconciliation process is possible between the Karzai government and the various branches of the Afghan Taliban. And I think the Secretary and the Special Representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan, Ambassador Mark Grossman, are trying very hard to see if that process can work. So far, I think there's not much sign of interest from the Afghan Taliban. This month, the leader of the negotiations process on the Afghan side, Professor Rabbani, was murdered by an assassin sent by the Afghan Taliban with a bomb literally in his turban. That's not a sign of interest in a negotiating process. I think the administration is trying to see if it can find a way, despite that, to bring about a reconciliation process, but I'm not very optimistic it's going to work.
Why do you think that effort continues when it keeps being shot down, for want of a better term?
Well, it keeps being blown up, I think might be a more accurate term. I think that the United States would prefer see if it can find a political process in Afghanistan. Military conflict is expensive and difficult, and we would like to see if there is interest in a political process. In the wake of the murder of Professor Rabbani, the administration is going directly to the Pakistanis, who provide safe haven and sanctuary and support for the Afghan Taliban, and in essence saying to the Pakistanis, use your influence, or we're going to have to try other methods of dealing with the Afghan Taliban over the long haul. If you want to see a reconciliation process, a political process in Afghanistan, now is the time for Pakistan to make clear it is prepared to do something to make that happen. Again, however, I'm not very optimistic. I don't think the Pakistanis are prepared to fully engage in a political process at this time. I think their calculation is the United States is going to leave Afghanistan sooner rather than later, and that they can just wait us out.
In your view, is there any other effort or any other procedure that might work?
I think that the United States has to send the signal that it's serious about a long-term commitment to Afghanistan. I think that the effort to build a strong and capable Afghan national army is well underway now. I think it would be wise for the United States to speak less about withdrawal plans and more about a long-term security commitment to Afghanistan. As it becomes apparent that we are committed to Afghanistan over the long haul, I think the calculations of the Afghan Taliban and their Pakistani mentors might begin to change, but that's not likely to happen in the short term. That's going to take time and strategic patience.
Is there a failure to communicate? Does the Haqqani Network, does the Afghan Taliban speak the same language as Western nations do when it comes to diplomacy?
No, I don't think so. I think that the Afghan Taliban gave us a graphic demonstration of their concept of negotiations when they sent a murderer to kill Professor Rabbani. This is a deadly, violent group. There is very little in the history of the Afghan Taliban going back to the mid-1990s that suggests they're very much interested in negotiations or compromise or in anything like the kind of political process that the United States and other NATO partners in Afghanistan would like to see happen. We'd all love to see reconciliation happen, but we can't build a policy based on hope. We have to build a policy based on reality.
Former CIA agent Bruce Riedel, who is now an analyst at the research and policy group, the Brookings Institute in Washington. Foreign ministers are meeting in Turkey this week to endorse Afghan efforts for a political solution to the decade-long conflict and to determine a plan for a sustainable Afghan economy. Analysts say the cooperation of Afghanistan's neighbor, Pakistan, is crucial to these efforts, particularly in the Afghan-led reconciliation process with insurgents. Ayaz Gul reports from Islamabad.
U.S. and NATO forces plan to end their combat role in Afghanistan by the end of 2014 after transferring security responsibility to their Afghan counterparts. This week's regional meeting in the Turkish city of Istanbul, followed by the Bonn conference in early December, are part of efforts to keep the international community, especially Afghanistan's neighbors, engaged following the withdrawal of international troops. But several high-profile attacks have prompted skepticism about the ability of local forces to sustain security gains. And some analysts say reconciliation with Afghan insurgents, including the Al-Qaeda-linked militant Haqqani network, holds the key to end the violence. Maliha Lodi is former Pakistani ambassador to Washington.
I think the Istanbul conference will be an important step in getting the regional countries to endorse the idea of reconciliation in Afghanistan, to ensure that there are no spoilers amongst regional countries for peace talks that lie ahead between the Afghan government and the Taliban.
Afghan and U.S. officials say Pakistan can play a crucial role in bringing insurgents to the negotiating table. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said last month that the United States supports an inclusive peace process in Afghanistan, but will not hesitate to step up military action against insurgents unwilling to engage in such talks.
Coalition and Afghan forces are increasing the pressure on the Taliban in Afghanistan. And across the border, we look to Pakistan to take strong steps to deny Afghan insurgents safe havens and to encourage the Taliban to enter negotiations in good faith.
Pakistani leaders deny allegations the country is harboring Afghan insurgents. Foreign Minister Hina Rabbani Khar said during recent talks with Clinton that Pakistan is ready to do whatever it can to support efforts aimed at stabilizing Afghanistan.
We must explore and give peace a chance on both sides of the border, and as and when that doesn't work, we can look at whatever options exist. People living on both sides of the border have seen too many years of conflict, have seen too many years of strife, have seen too many years of uncertainty.
Analysts like former Pakistani diplomat Maliha Lodi say that improved ties between Washington and Islamabad will enable them to narrow differences on how to take the Afghan peace efforts further.
Pakistan advocates that there should be a reduction of violence to create the space for these talks. America is still insisting that there is no contradiction in their fight and talk approach. Pakistan believes you can't do both at the same time, nor can you expect Pakistan then to carry out contradictory objectives. So I think going forward, these are important issues that the two countries will have to resolve and reconcile so that we can get to the common goal, and it is a common goal, to see peace in Afghanistan and peace on Pakistan's border.
The conference in Istanbul is taking place after the September 20th assassination of Afghanistan's top peace negotiator, former President Burhanuddin Rabbani, which halted the reconciliation process in the country. Afghanistan accused Pakistan's military spy agency of involvement in the attack, an allegation that Pakistan strongly denied. Afghan and Pakistani leaders on Tuesday held their first talks since the assassination in a Turkish-mediated meeting aimed at reducing tensions between the two neighbors. Ayaz Gul for VOA News, Islamabad.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has emphasized Turkey's growing role in the Middle East and beyond in remarks at the opening dinner of the 2011 Annual Conference on U.S.-Turkey Relations. The event, hosted by the American-Turkish Council, was held at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington late Monday. Clinton stood at a podium before the U.S. and Turkish flags and highlighted Turkey's growing economic leadership.
And when I talk with Turks, from students to entrepreneurs to government officials, I see a confidence and optimism, and it is for a good reason. Turkey can be proud that it has become the 17th largest economy in the world, with ambitions to reach the top 10 in the coming years. This story, sometimes called the Turkish miracle, is well known, but its strategic implications are perhaps less well understood.
Clinton emphasized 4 main points.
First, that a strong U.S.-Turkey relationship has contributed to Turkish prosperity. That in turn, Turkey's economic growth should further strengthen our partnership. That for Turkey to take full advantage of its new opportunities, it will have to consolidate democratic progress at home and peace and stability in its neighborhood. And finally, that Turkey's economic leadership can be a powerful force for progress across the region.
Even as Clinton highlighted Turkish economic successes, she said that the nation must work to further empower women and to address the concerns of ethnic minority groups.
A vibrant economy depends upon the free exchange of ideas, the free flow of information, and the rule of law. Strengthening due process, cracking down on corruption helps any country grow more rapidly, and also protecting a free and independent media, which plays a role that is very important.
The Secretary of State said the United States has been concerned by the deterioration of relations between Turkey and Israel, and she urged both countries to work on improving ties. She also noted tensions between Turkey and Cyprus, saying the parties need to work toward a bizonal, bicommunal federation. Clinton also urged Turkey to continue to work toward normalizing ties with Armenia. Clinton said Turkey's growing economic leadership has the potential to support positive changes far beyond its borders.
Turkey sends more than a quarter of its exports to nations in the Middle East and North Africa. Its companies are therefore investing heavily across the region. Turkish businesses are helping to rebuild Iraq. They are one of the largest sources of foreign direct investment in Egypt, and Turkish planes have already resumed flights to Libya. Along with political change and reform must come economic reform in this region. To succeed, the Arab political awakening must also be an economic awakening. President Obama has outlined a comprehensive economic agenda to support the democratic transitions now underway, and Turkey is a valuable partner in this effort.
In the course of her speech, Clinton again offered condolences to the Turkish people following the recent earthquake there, as well as for a Kurdish Workers' Party attack less than 2 weeks ago that killed 24 Turkish soldiers. This has been VOA's Middle East Monitor. Join us Monday through Friday for news from the region and of interest to the region. Coming up on International Edition, a tenor saxophonist marks his 25th year as a solo recording artist. Thanks for tuning in to VOA.
For more on the stories you've heard on our radio programs, visit our website at voanews.com. That's where you'll find in-depth reports, related stories, videos, and more from our team of correspondents. Or take the news with you by downloading podcasts of your favorite VOA programs. That's at voanews.com. Online news for a changing world.